Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one is going to be for episode 194, and the big thing about this episode is that it adapts very accurately Boruto manga chapter 27. There of course are some new anime original scenes because typically most Boruto chapters are not sort of enough on their own to just be able to turn into a full episode, basically, unless the anime does some sort of extensions type stuff like this one did. This one had a good chance to do that because it's a very dialogue heavy chapter and there's not really much sort of action, which can tend to be stuff that they blow through very quickly. So but they still needed to add in roughly 4 or 5 minutes of new content here to make it work sort of one chapter per episode. But all the new stuff I think worked well and added to the dynamics that they were going for, and definitely made the anime, in my mind, just a kind of better experience over the manga. The manga still does a very good job at this point because this is one of the few points in the manga where they just sit down and focus on character, and it definitely works because Boruto Kawaki is one of the best dynamics in the series. So the anime actually taking even more time to do that, but also add on to here's some extra Hinata scenes that we didn't get, are actually quite nice. So the main addition of scenes that we got in this episode was that basically in between the first dinner scene in this episode, which is in the manga. In the manga, it cuts straight from that dinner scene to the scene where Boruto and Kawaki explain where they each got their karma marks to each other, which basically creates the whole second half of the episode. It's a rather quick transition between one scene into the other. And here, what they do is they add in this whole sort of 4 or 5 minute sequence where before Kawaki goes over to talk to Boruto and ask him, how'd you get your karma mark? We have a scene where Boruto goes out to talk to Sarada and Mitsuki, and they have a little bit of a chat about how's it like living with Kawaki, and he actually ends up defending Kawaki a little bit, that they're kind of very much oh, what's it like living with the really angry guy who's a risk to the village, shouldn't we keep him secure somewhere else? But Boruto stands up for him a little bit, and it's he's the absolute worst, but everything he says gets across that he's not actually the absolute worst, that Boruto is beginning to, not, I don't think it's quite at the point just yet, where Boruto is beginning to full on like him, be the whole he can be my friend type situation, but he's definitely beginning to lose the same dynamic that Sarada and Mitsuki sort of still have with him at the moment, because he understands him a little bit better after just the first few times and days with Kawaki. So that was really good. And while this is happening, Kawaki actually goes out on his own. Naruto follows him, of course. But Kawaki just takes a little bit of a walk around the Leaf Village. Doesn't really look or go anywhere specific. He basically just goes out, sits by the bank of the river, and the main thing that really he encounters is just that he sees a family having a happy moment, just fun, playing together. Just this is what a family happy together is like. Obviously, something Kawaki himself has never experienced prior to becoming sort of part of the Uzumaki household, and then that is meant to add on to the scene that happened just before he went out, which was the dinner scene, where Kawaki wasn't really involved in it personally. He's there at the table with them, but it's more that Boruto, Naruto, Hinata, and Himawari have a family moment at the dinner table, just having that fun back and forth where Hinata's you're putting too much salt on your food there, Boruto, and he kind of defends himself from this kind of overuse of the salt and that sort of thing. And he's just oh, so this is what it's like to sort of be part of a family. You just have this sort of really casual conversation at the table, and it's all very relaxed and so on. He's not used to that, which is then a pretty nice contrast for me with when we get to the next dinner scene, where he comes in. They basically reveal, I suppose, that I guess Kawaki really likes hot pot, and that might be the future answer that Kawaki has to Hinata's question of, what's your favorite food, basically? What would you like for dinner tonight? A question he's never been asked before, which was a nice scene from Hinata's point of view of her trying to show that it's not just Naruto who's making an effort with him, but Hinata as well is trying to make him feel comfortable and so on. So he then has a scene at the dinner table where he gets to be involved in the sort of back and forth dynamic with everyone, where the big thing that they go for here is that everyone is going for the meat first from the hot pot. And that's Boruto. He sort of gets scolded for it a little bit, but then he's like, Kawaki's doing it too. And then Himawari says that, Naruto's doing it as well. So, again, very small, basic fun scenes, but the dynamic that they're going for between the characters here works out really well, where this is Kawaki involved in one of these little family tiny arguments that don't really mean anything, along with everyone else. Fun at the dinner table type thing. So he kind of has one of those moments, and I think this actually works out a little bit better in the anime, because this fits perfectly as the scene that opens him up just that little bit. Referencing, of course, the Naruto scene with Shikamaru and Sai, where he's like, oh, he hasn't quite opened up to us yet, but I'm hoping once he gets more comfortable, he will. And it feels like that scene, that second dinner scene, is meant to be that he's finally a little bit comfortable, and then immediately after that, that's when he goes to Boruto and asks him, how did you get your karma mark? Finally sort of, okay, I'm going to need to work with this guy. Let me at least try. So let's open the door here and have an attempt at conversation. And it goes well. Because, I suppose from Kawaki's point of view, this is a case where he's wondering, like, okay, how does Boruto in this situation, being it like the Hokage's son, how does he have a karma mark? This is weird. If this is related to Jigen like mine is, this is really weird, and that makes me very suspicious of Boruto. But the second he finds out it's like unrelated to Jigen, he's kind of like, oh, okay, he got it from somewhere else, but he still has the same karma mark. It's clear it's the same thing, and because of that, there's just going to be this like inherent connection. They're kind of going for the kind of the Jinchuriki dynamic, but sort of in a slightly different way. They both have the same curse mark. Effectively, is sort of how they're viewing it. Because Kawaki, of course, gets his in such like a torturous, barbaric way. And even though Boruto got his and he didn't almost realize what happened, like there didn't seem to be any sense of the same violence to the way he got his, they still have this mark and are trying to investigate exactly, what it means and, wanting to get rid of it, of course. So that's a very interesting dynamic, because that is still what the characters are sort of dealing with in the manga now. That's like the goal of Kawaki, is to rid himself, but also everyone else, of the karma mark, so that they don't have to go through what he did. So Boruto's explanation, of course, fits, because we already saw what happened, and there's still, I suppose, a slight element of mystery around, like, wow, Boruto getting the karma mark went really smoothly. Like, it's like compared to every other example of someone getting a karma mark, it's like Boruto's just like happened like that, with basically almost like no contact. But as we get in Kawaki's backstory here about how he got his, Jigen like almost like injects the karma mark into him, into his bloodstream, and it causes this like incredible reaction within his body, and it nearly kills him, as evidenced by the fact that all the smashed jars around that room are all kids who have died, potential vessels who've died during the process of trying to get a karma mark. And obviously, like, this helps to explain, like, okay, Kawaki was taken away from his father by Jigen, but Jigen was arguably even worse, just because of, he gave him this, present, of course, like he said in one of the previous episodes, but it's just this curse that he wants rid of. So it's this, this is why he doesn't trust people. This is the scene between Naruto and Hinata of, we're trying, I hope he can get comfortable in the house, And Hinata even says, like, I wonder what he went through in his past to make him this way. And Naruto notes that, yeah, he doesn't trust anyone. It's because of everyone he's considered a father figure has, done something to him or has put him through so much that he can't trust anyone anymore. But it's been very nice so far at the Uzumaki household, and he's beginning to open up. So that is a nice thing to have. But yeah, the karma scene is interesting because I suppose this is where the timing is probably very, very tight on while they were animating this episode. If they in any way had the ability to incorporate some of what we got from the most recent Boruto chapter 56 into it. By looking at the scene, and I watched it a few times, they definitely, I feel, adapted it just based off the manga chapter 27, rather than really looking ahead to chapter 56, because there's no real visuals to suggest, or highlight the third character. Because if you look at the dialogue very closely in the scene, they mention that there are only 3 potential vessel candidates left. Kawaki, the boy beside him who we see die, and he fails the karma implantation kind of ritual, and then there is still another character. There's a third one that they don't get to, they don't show as part of this, who is covered in the chapter 56 stuff. So there was no like anime looking ahead in the manga, like changing this scene to include a bit of that, which I don't really mind all that much. I think that's fine to keep a little bit of a mystery for now, because this is just Kawaki explaining directly how he got his to Boruto, which was the question at play here. So that was quite interesting just to see that, like, yeah, this chapter only came out like 3-4 weeks ago. That seems very tight on if they even could have included any element of that in it. But yeah, that gets into how far ahead, like in terms of where the manga is going, to the anime writers and stuff like that, the production team, how much do they know about that stuff? And it's kind of unclear, because Boruto, because it's like basically every week of the year there's an episode, like it's such a massive production. There's so many moving parts. It's a wonder they get the episodes out every week. So it's not too much of a problem that there was no foreshadowing kind of scene there. It works as it is because you still have the mystery of, like, why would the manga have Kawaki be the second last kid? Why not just have him be the last and build the frustration from the villains, but then they finally get their vessel? So that is quite significant. But yeah, the key takeaways from this, especially if you're anime only, has to be that you obviously don't know what's going on with the karma mark and what it's about, but you've just learned that Jigen is a character who is capable of giving the karma mark to someone else. That's very, very significant. Now, obviously, he does it in such a kind of weird scientific way of like injecting it into people through this kind of ritual system. But it is something he is capable of doing, and he seems to have a lot of control over the karma mark. So that makes him, as the leader of Kara, super interesting. And now you've just learned something kind of even more distinct about him. We see that Amado has been directly involved with these experiments on the children to get the perfect vessel. But there's also a sense where, like, time seems to be running out, that they need a vessel, and they sort of need the vessel quick for some reason. Why is that? That's interesting. Why a vessel at all? Why such specific terminology? Because, like, at this point, we know so little about karma. You're kind of really looking into, like, I sort of see the seeds being planted for where they eventually go with the explanation. But we'll get there. We'll get to the explanation of this. But right now, this is how Kawaki got his. He was one of the lucky kids to survive, and he doesn't see it as lucky. He sees it as, like, unlucky that he wasn't just killed with the others. That Boruto mentions you were somehow spared, but he doesn't view it that way, because of the karma to him just represents so much that's gone wrong in his life and all this kind of negative aspects, that if there's one thing he wants to do, it's to get rid of this karma mark, because if he is the vessel and Jigen and Kara want him back because he is the vessel that they need to accomplish something, then if he doesn't have the karma mark, then he's not really the vessel anymore necessarily. So you can see sort of the logic of like, that's another reason why he wants rid of this. So the idea of him potentially getting to a point where he's comfortable in the Leaf Village, is truly willing to accept the protection of Naruto and everyone there. That's going to be a big moment when he finally just sets in stone that like this is the place where I have to sort of stand my ground and allow them to defend me from Jigen. But again, we're still sort of waiting for him to properly just open up about okay, how much do you know about Kara as an organization? We kind of need to know about them. Please tell us, Kawaki. That's what we're kind of waiting for at this point. Obviously, him telling Boruto how he got his is him revealing something about himself that's quite personal for the first time. And obviously, Naruto overhears that, so now he better understands the idea of like, that explains a lot with Kawaki. That, Naruto knows about, having something sort of like implanted inside him that affects how others like view him. It's not the exact same dynamic, but it's a similar one that Naruto can understand to a degree. Boruto can obviously deal with that as well, and I like that as just the dynamic that we're going for here. That I'm so excited to see the anime adapt so many of these other scenes. Like the next episode, I think is going to be really, really good, and just like all this character stuff. I love that we're finally getting a proper character development arc here, because this is going to help Boruto. It's going to help Kawaki. We're going to get some Naruto stuff, and then based on this episode, a lot of the extra anime scenes they're going to add are also going to be good. Like I absolutely would be all for more scenes of Kawaki interacting with Hinata, with Himawari, and hopefully they even do like okay, Sarada Mitsuki maybe interacting with him, and so on, stuff like that. I'd be all for that, because I think they're going to have time over the next few episodes, and that they've still got a good amount of material. Again, we're on chapter 56 here. They've only just adapted chapter 27. So there's space to work with. Like we're not even at the halfway point. Like we're there's half of the manga still ahead of us, so they can continue to do the manga adaptation for the next while, but they're eventually going to have to slow down a little bit, just because of course they're going to be covering like 4 chapters a week, but we only get 1 chapter a month. So even though we have a buffer of like 20 plus chapters, within a couple of months they are going to get awfully close to the manga, and I think they like having a little bit of a buffer so they can really work with, okay, we can extend stuff out here, we can have an anime original arc between this arc and this arc, and so on. So I think they're in a pretty good spot here, I think, with regards to what they can do of like keeping it to 1 chapter per episode, and then I think there's probably room to actually add in some anime only episodes in this as well, because Kawaki interacting with the Leaf Village, being more casual with the Leaf Village, is just a really fun dynamic that I want to see. So the question is obviously going to come up of like, are we going to get to see Kawaki interact with like, Inoshika Cho, like some of the other teams that we don't see in the manga basically like ever. That there's room to work with here for sure. And so on. So that's I think most of what I wanted to say about this episode. It's just really strong on the character stuff, and the final scene, I suppose, is that Boruto is like, I'll help you with this, but I'm still upset that you broke the vase that Himawari made. You need to make amends for that before I'll properly work with you. And Naruto's actually the one to come in and be like, that's just the way Boruto is. He's set on this, so you're probably going to have to do something to deal with this. And Kawaki's first thought is kind of like, okay, I'll get a new one. are you planning to steal one? And he doesn't really answer the question, but Naruto's like, okay, I'll help you with this. We are going out, I'll like basically show you around the village here, and we'll look into some way you can make amends for the vase. We'll go vase shopping together. So that's a really fun dynamic of we're going to get to see Kawaki just, I suppose, interact more with the village, and that he does care about what happened. Because there was the little scene at the dinner table where he kind of glanced over at Himawari, and she's still a little cautious around him because I suppose he did break the thing that she made, and they haven't spoken much really. So, that is a relationship that does need to be, repaired a little bit. So that was a really good final scene. But yeah, that's been the review. Really, really fun episode. But they're my thoughts. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.